Well, hello people, Got That Funk here, and a video response to LatumWay and his recent video about capital punishment and whatever. Hey dude, I'm decided to prioritize you instead of my other video I was working on. I hope you're happy. Anyway, and pardon the fuzzy light. I've got my sacred geometry candle burning there, 19 flames. Uh, Maybe I'll talk more about that another time. Bit of a poke of fun at nicotine too there. Anyway, right, LatumWay, your video was really, really good. And you make a really good point about questioning. It's always good to question serious issues like capital punishment, whether you're for it or against it. There are strong arguments on both sides. However, I personally think the arguments against the death penalty outweigh the arguments for it by a ratio of about 10 to 1. Um, I've given this issue so much thought over my life because I've actually changed my opinion. When I was a little guy, I used to be against the death penalty, and then as I was growing up, I started to think more and more that it made sense. And for the earliest part of my adult life, I suppose, I was pro-death penalty. And after I moved to Britain and lived here for about a year or two, I started to move the other direction. And it was only sort of, I suppose, maybe 15, 16, 17 years ago that I decided, yeah, the death penalty is absolutely wrong. So yeah, I've moved back and forth as I've learned more and experienced more of life, and my concepts of justice and mercy have matured as I've gotten older. I think mercy is an underdeveloped idea in modern discourse. I don't think it gets anywhere near as much attention as our predecessors may have given it, and I think mercy needs to be re-examined as a human value. So I'll get that out there right away, and you can therefore obviously infer that I'm against the death penalty for reasons of mercy as well as practical reasons. The most significant of all the practical reasons I oppose the death penalty is because I think it is completely improper, nay, it's wrong for the populace to license the state to kill its own citizens. In a democracy, especially, uh, this we need to recognize that our system of laws, no matter how good they are never going to be perfect. And the administration of those laws, the execution of those laws, is never going to be perfect. There is always going to be imperfections both in the law and the interpretation of the law, the application of the law. If the laws could be perfect, then maybe you could justifiably argue for a death penalty. But that can't happen. There will always be imperfections. Sometimes people confess to crimes they didn't commit. Sometimes people get busted for crimes they didn't commit, and the evidence, circumstantial or whatever, ends up getting them convicted. And like LatumWay was saying in his video, if even one person gets convicted and executed um, by mistake or by a miscarriage of justice of the most extreme kind, that is that means the system needs to be addressed. And it's been shown that people have been executed, certainly in America, um, who were later found to be innocent. In the UK, there was in the early 90s, there was a couple of cases where people who had been busted and put away for IRA bombings turned out to be completely innocent. And the judge who convicted them at the time said if he could, he would have killed them. So those are good examples right there. Anyway, so I'm meandering a bit, and you'll have to excuse me, but I've got so many different things I want to say. When I first started talking about my opposition to the death penalty online, way back when the internet was really, really slow and really new, sort of 96, 97, I suppose. Um, I used to chat room a lot back then, and when I mentioned I was against the death penalty in a chat room full of Americans, I took an awful lot of abuse. And one of the common things people used to say to me was, "Oh, if it was your daughter that got raped and murdered, you'd want to kill the guy." It's like, well, maybe I would want to kill the guy. That doesn't necessarily mean killing the guy is right. And it certainly doesn't mean I would want the state to kill on my behalf or on the behalf of my daughter. That would effectively make my daughter, morally speaking, the killer because it would be retribution, an eye for an eye. Some sort of moral equivalence going on there, which I don't think exists at all in this, especially when it comes to capital punishment. So I'm against capital punishment for all crimes in all circumstances. I think there has to be a better way. Now, the argument about keeping someone in life prison for life is too expensive and whatever, I hear that one sometimes, and I also hear it's too merciful. That's a very common one. People say it's too good for them, life imprisonment, so what, you take away their liberty. Well, on an idealistic tangent, if we made society good enough so that people valued their liberty, losing your liberty would be a pretty nasty punishment all by itself. But that's another issue. Anyway, as regards the issue about life imprisonment being more merciful or less, I was going to say this in a video response to Jasper Avi the other day, but I never got around to it. I've been too busy and too ill lately. But anyway, but what was I going to say? Mercy? Something about mercy? I'll probably edit this bit out. Um, Man, I was rolling there as well. Fuck. Stoned moment. Um, hmm. Stroke of the beard is completely gone. What was I going to say to Jasper? Something to do with mercy. That's what it was. Oh, yeah. I was going to say to Jasper Avi that life imprisonment is more humane than the death penalty. You could argue that being made to stay on death row for the rest of your life, waiting to die with no freedom, is cruel and unusual punishment. And I get that argument. But if you're not on death row and you're just there for the rest of your life, and that is where you've wound up, you put yourself in that position. Therefore, you have to deal with those consequences. I do think that is a much more merciful thing than taking someone's life against their will. Now, I say against their will because I actually have a radical solution, I think, to this problem. Because I'm obviously, this is a different subject totally, but I'm in favor of very strictly controlled legalization of euthanasia under very specific circumstances. And one of those circumstances that I would advocate was doing away with the death penalty completely. But for capital crimes, life imprisonment would be the maximum penalty that could be imposed by a judge. But at any point after a defendant was tired of the appeals process, they could opt to ask the state to execute them or put themselves through euthanasia, however it would be framed. That would solve an awful lot of problems. And I know that if you know you're guilty, are you really going to wait 60 years in prison to die, or are you just going to say fuck it after a while? I don't know. I don't know. I think it would be an interesting experiment anyway, and certainly more merciful than killing people whether they want you to kill them or not. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching, and may all your ups and downs be ups.